diagnosis, the raw truth of cancer survivorship. And today we've got Faizel Jacobs as our guest. Faizel, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Do you want to share a little bit about your story and just tell us about your journey? What happened? Where did it begin? When did it begin?
So mine goes back to 2016. The 6th of April, when everything, or 6th of May, sorry, 2016, when everything changed for me. You know, if you look at the 5th of May, I really thought I was living the good life. A very good job. I was getting global recognition for the work that I was doing. I was earning good money. Now I was set, 2 cars, a house. Now, yes, I was divorced, but my kids had everything they wanted. And I thought I was, I've made it. And on the 6th, I went for a colonoscopy. I didn't think much about it. It was more a case of, I thought I had hemorrhoids. I was at the GP for something completely unrelated. And he said to me, this doesn't look like hemorrhoids. I think you need to go and see a surgeon. Now, I was afraid of somebody messing around in my bum. But anyway, we went for this. And yeah, after the procedure, after the colonoscopy, I was in the ward. Went to the bathroom. I'm getting changed because I'm going to work. I was that oak. And the surgeon walks in, Dr. Kassir, big burly Afrikaner dude. You look at him, you see a rugby player, and he walks in and he's Baas Meneer Jacobs. And me being me, I'm in the bathroom, and instantly I hated that man. His words to me were, this doesn't look good. It looks like you may have cancer, but either way, you're going to have a bag. That was his full sentence. I stopped hearing everything after that word cancer. And I had to go back a few days later to get the results of a biopsy. And it was the longest 4 days of my life. It felt like 400 years. And yeah, it got confirmed. I had colorectal cancer, and I was going to need this surgery to remove the tumor that would leave me with a permanent stoma or colostomy. And almost 9 years later, I'm cancer-free.
So would you share a little bit about going back to when you got that diagnosis? You spoke about how you weren't best friends with the doctor, but what happened from an emotional perspective with your family, with your friends? How did you deal with life then?
So, if you've done any sort of coaching or life skills workshops, you would have learned about the grief cycle. And they depict it as this wave where you go through these different stages. And it's sort of that perfect, almost U-shaped wave, but they don't tell you you're going to be getting repeating cycles of this wave. So I think it was the first time ever that I'm not coming to work. There was just too much going on. And there's this, as I've come to learn, there's this phenomenon on the African continent. When you hear the word cancer, you sign your death warrant. And I did that. I was dying. And at the time, I was taking care of my late mom, who had systemic lupus as well as dementia. My boys were 9 and 11. Who was going to take care of them? I'm not going to see them matriculate, get married. I'm going to miss so many milestones. Because again, for me, I signed on the dotted line. It's a death warrant. But then there was this sort of negotiation stage. And I remember going, Ya Allah, dear God, help me beat this thing. And if my journey can inspire one person, Alhamdulillah, all praise be to you, it was worth it. And I kind of made the decision purposefully to stop looking at Google, because I was just getting overwhelmed with too much information. And keep in mind, up until waking up after surgery, I never looked up what a stoma was. Everything was centered around cancer, the cancer. And for me personally, the information was just way too much, and there was just way too much contradiction, and I didn't want to sit with that. And I think for me also a very interesting thing happened during that time of you could have cancer to getting that confirmation. I picked my boys up from school, came home, and I was helping my youngest with homework. And I had him on my lap, and we were going through his homework, and then my cell phone went. I saw it was work, and I sort of scooted him off. I opened up my laptop and I answered the phone, and Riaz walked off, and his words cut deep, and it was, fuck, work again. Wow. He was angry. And I went through the call, but that, like, as I said, it hit. And it wasn't that he swore, it was just the meaning behind those words. And I asked the question, what are they going to remember about me? And again, I'm in this I'm dying sort of mindset. And all I could come up was my father gave us everything we wanted, but not all we needed.
Wow.
And I realized I wasn't present. I had this great job. I thought nothing of working 14, 15 hours a day. I'm not exaggerating. I'd finish 11 o'clock at night. It was a 24/7 operation. But I'm back the next morning at 9 o'clock. And as I said, I was getting global recognition. Every 6 months, I would be cashing in shares as part of the management perks that we had. My last lot of shares, one share was valued at 1,000 US dollars. I was styling. And all of a sudden, all that money that I was earning meant nothing. And that's where I went. Ya Allah, help me beat this thing. And if I could inspire one person. The Friday before this, I also then made the decision to tell the family, I'm going to stop looking at Google. And I'm not interested in Auntie Fauzi's friends, Khadija's boyfriend's auntie with their secret recipes.
Faizel, just give me a sec. My freaking door slammed. So, Olivia, you're going to have to cut it. So just pick up where you made the decision to tell your family and you weren't interested. Sorry.
No worries. So I made the decision and was extremely conscious that I'm not going to take people's recommendations and secret recipes and the likes. I'm going to trust, and I remember saying to the close-knit family, I'm going to trust that the Lord above is guiding the surgeons, and I'm going to do everything that they tell me to do to beat this thing. Please, no secret recipes, no conspiracy theories. I'm just doing what the doctors said. They have my lab results, they have my scans, because as you know, once you get told you've got cancer, your body no longer belongs to you. You probed and you prodded. So they've got x-rays, scans, blood tests, biopsies galore. And they're basing their decisions on what they're finding. And I still got the recipe books. I still got the unsolicited advice. And there was an incident that happened that was really telling. And it was my opposite neighbor who came over, and I invited him in, and he's, nope. I just wanted to say, I'm really sorry. I heard you got cancer. And I said, yes, Mr. De Silva. And he's like, you need to stay positive. And I said, I'm positive. I'm going to beat this thing. And he says, no, 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 you don't understand. You need to stay positive. And I'm getting frustrated with this man, and I'm positive. And he goes again, it was a third time. You do not understand. You need to stay positive. And in my mind, and excuse me for the profanities, but I went, for fuck's sakes, I'm positive. But I don't know, something in me just said, you're right, Mr. De Silva, I need to stay positive. And he said, that's it, my boy. I'll come and see you again. And he turned and he left. And it was at that point, because I'm also filled with anger now, not just that, why me? Why am I going through this? I'm a good man. I'm chairperson of the Thornton Islamic Society. I'm actively involved and sitting around the same table with the mayor of Cape Town, fighting for land so that we can build a mosque. I mean, that's like one of the ultimate forms of jihad. What did I do to deserve this? You know, I have that anger, and then also people giving me this unsolicited advice, recipes, and this incident that happened. And I came to the conclusion that people wanted to help, but they didn't know how.
So Faizel, take me back to when you told your family. What were some of the thoughts? What were some of the emotions? How did they respond? Just take me back to that part.
I think for them, it was a lot like for me, where this is a death sentence. And keep in mind, for my immediate family, I had just made history. We've never had a case of cancer in our family before. So, you know, there wasn't a lot of experience within the immediate family. We've had it with extended families and friends and etc. because, you know, we all get touched by cancer in some form. And I think their fear was just as much as mine, in you dying. But nobody said those words. You know, I thought those words, but I couldn't verbalize it. And yeah, I think we were all on the same page there.
And I think we live in a society when you hear the big C, it means you're going to die, right? And I think you and I both know, I mean, I'm 8 years down the line in my journey and you're 9. And we know that it's actually, cancer is not a death sentence.
But no, provided it's caught early.
Yes, and I think especially in your world, that scanning and going for tests and checkups is so important.
Yeah.
You know, I think that, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about that. But as part of this journey, what I'd like to understand is you go from this high-powered businessman to the work and the advocacy work that you're doing now. Talk to me about how you went from there to this.
So, as I said, I had this prayer that went, dear God, help me beat this thing. And it was a week after my surgery, where I finally got to meet the oncologist. So for those who don't know, sometimes you will meet the oncologist before surgery, sometimes after. What happens is the radiologist, the surgeons, the oncologist, they all have a meeting and they discuss the patient and what is going to be the best course of action. And for me, there was an uncertainty. Do we do chemo first, then surgery, or do we do surgery and then chemo? But they felt, and again, this is so key, they felt that we caught it early enough. So the decision was made, let's do the surgery first. We'll do some extra biopsies while we're in there, and then we take it from there. So a week after my surgery, I met the oncologist and I got the good news. We caught it early. And as I say, the only side effect is me having a colostomy. So for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it means I poop into a bag that's attached to my stomach. And yeah, so that evening, I had friends come visit me in hospital, and I obviously shared the news, yay, I'm cancer free. And they said, come run with us. We running the Chicago Marathon. we're raising the funds for a pediatric oncology hospital being built in Palestine.
Wow.
I remember looking up and going, yo, bruh, you were quick. Because this was within a week and a half, right, of uttering those words.
Wow.
And I said yes. And I didn't realize it was 5 months later. Now, keep in
Wow.
mind, I had major surgery. I've never run anything further than 10 kilometers in my life. And I was about to embark on this journey of 42 kilometers. And I did it. And it so happens it was freaking the weekend of World Ostomy Day. I ran the Chicago Marathon. At the time, I didn't know. I raised $1,500 for the scores.
Wow.
And initially, I thought I lived that prayer.
Wow.
And it was coming back that people started talking within the stoma community about what it is I have just done. And then I got invited by Cancer to come and speak at their cancer support group. Hollister invited me to come speak at a patient day being held at Tygerberg Hospital. And that started exposing me to the world of there's a problem here. And there's such a little known. And I started doing more and more of these talks. But at the same time, I was losing the passion for the work that I was doing in terms of my traditional job, if you will, where, again, all that money that I was earning didn't mean anything. And where somebody says to me, your story has inspired me.
That's so beautiful. Oh, that's so beautiful. Faizel, I think at any stage of our life that, when you go through a trauma like this, if you can somehow give back in a small way, that's almost more meaningful than the journey that you go through.
Exactly. No, it is. And for me, and certainly colleagues that has joined in on this journey, and I call them colleagues, but we are all ostomates. I think the biggest blessing is we kind of realize that as much as we're going through our own crap, there's someone that's going through worse. And it's really kept us grounded in that. And we're facing the obstacles that life puts out there, because whether we like it or not, and no matter how much you plan, life is going to throw you obstacles. It just keeps that perspective going for our own personal selves.
Faizel, talk to me about the colostomy bag and, what is it like? Because your life is not the same as it was before. Talk to me about the adjustment, just demystify the whole stigmatism about the bag and what's life really like, and just share that little bit, your journey and some of your challenges, and please be as raw and honest as possible.
So I think the first thing, nobody can prepare you for life with an ostomy. Nobody can. And the journey is very different for everyone. And I think the same speaks to the cancer journey. A good friend of mine, she has a colostomy, also colorectal cancer. But her journey was very different to mine. When my cancer was caught early, I didn't need chemo radiation. She needed chemo. And so her body reacted differently. So the challenges she faced was very different to mine. But the one thing that became brutal for me and so many ostomates is humiliation and our dignity being stripped. Because when you have a pouch that isn't working, and what I mean by that is it doesn't give you a good seal. So when you do your business, whether it is a urostomy for urine or an ileostomy or colostomy for feces, you end up swelling yourself. Now, we've all been in a car, we're rushing home, and I need the bathroom. And we've got this ability to squeeze. And you pull up at home and out the car, and the freaking key won't go into the front door. Nothing works, but you are able to squeeze. As an ostomate, we do not have that. We incontinent. In fact, we don't even know when a movement is happening. So we don't really know until it's too late that you are leaking. So imagine that happening in public. And for me, when I was training for the marathon, I remember one evening after work, my 12-year-old son he was 11 turned 12. Dad, I want to go and run with you. And we were running on the Sea Point Promenade in Cape Town. And about 400-500 meters from the car, I sprung a leak and I had feces running all over me. And I was, as you can imagine, humiliated. But my son is with me, so I need to be brave. But I think he saw. And he just said, Dad, don't stress. Give me the keys. I'll be right back. He ran to the car, he came back. And he stood on the promenade with a towel around him so that I could change. Right.
Wow.
So very often our dignity gets stripped.
What a brave boy. What a brave boy. Thank you for sharing that deep story, because I think Faizel, what happens is that we don't talk about these things. We don't talk about the humiliation, and we don't talk about the life that you have to go through and the people around you. Because it's no longer you on this journey, it's the whole family and friends that are on this journey.
Yeah. That is so true. You know, there are certain stories about things that happens. It takes me straight back to that emotion. And I think it's important. And for a long time, I fought it, and I would get upset with myself when I got this emotional. And someone one day asked me the question, how do you remain so positive to all of this that is happening? And the words were, you shit yourself, you leaking out in public, you've told us stories of your pouches falling off. And just for the record, it took me a while, but I found a pouching solution that gives me confidence. Where I can go out and I can do my runs without worrying about the leaks. So there is hope out there. It's not a hopeless case. I think it's important that we say that. But it's also important to talk about the emotions and not to hide that, because the mental health you need to be able to navigate you're facing your mortality. You're worried about the people around you. So you need to put on a brave front for them. And I almost feel as though we get indoctrinated to not show what it is we are feeling. Boy meets girl, boy and girl fall in love, they break up, the girl gets told, oh, men are assholes, there's so many, they're all the same, there's no need to carry on like this. Boys are told there's so many fish in the sea, just move on to the next one. As kids, I'm sure your mother did it. What are you crying for? I will give you a reason to cry. We're not allowed to feel our emotions, and we wonder why men are so closed off. We need to create a safe space for it. Yeah, sorry, I digress.
No, that was beautiful. Faizel, you just had me thinking. So your life has had to carry a normal. I see a wedding ring on that finger. Talk
Yeah.
to us about that. What happened there?
So something I never thought that would happen. I met someone, and when I made the decision, so I was divorced for a few years when I was diagnosed. And then this happened, and I got exposed to life with a stoma. I just kind of resigned myself to the fact that I'm probably going to die single. Keeping in mind, I mean, I was 44 years old. Um, and yeah, I met someone. But when I made the decision, you know what, let's try this dating thing. Because it's the companionship that you miss. That someone to be able to speak to. And it was a tricky one to navigate because at what point do you say you have the stoma?
Hmm.
Because not everybody's going to want to accept you for that. And I put it out there right up front.
Wow.
Um, I, I got rejected. I got accepted. Um, but yeah, I found someone who accepted me for me, and we almost married 6 years. So yeah,
Oh, congratulations. That is just a beautiful story.
thank you.
So there is life after a bag.
There is life after a bag, with and even with a bag.
And with a bag. And how are your boys doing?
They're good. They don't even see it anymore. They're very aware. If they see me just filling the pouch, and then, "You okay? Do you need anything?" And then, "No, I'm good." And that's cool. And we just carry on as per normal. So, I've also had to learn how to, and I think this is important when you're facing something like this, and even with cancer, we don't want to share what is happening. We don't want to share the journey. Um, you hear chemo, and one of the biggest things I was afraid of, am I going to lose my hair? How much am I going to be throwing up? And um, all of this sort of thing. And you don't want to be a burden to anybody else. I mean, you must have had it. Hey, if you need anything, just let us know. How often do you take people up on that? Yes, you get people that it was just words, but there are also people that follow through on that. Um, People don't know how to support you because they don't know what you need. And I've had to find a way. When I explained to them about the cancer, um, my boys, that is, it was they had this game on the PlayStation, and they had just downloaded an update or a patch to fix this glitch. And I used that as the analogy. So dad's got a glitch in his system and he needs to go for the surgery. And, I've had to learn how to keep it age appropriate for them. It was very difficult with a mom who had dementia. But my brothers, etc., I've had to open up about what was happening so that they knew. When I went back to work, I kind of realized, hold on, what if I need to change my pouch at work? What do I do? And I kind of had to have that conversation with my boss, and we found a solution, an hygienic way of disposing of the pouch. But then I also got filled with so much anxieties because, as I mentioned, we're incontinent. So this thing farts, it makes a noise, it wants to get involved in the conversation. So what do I do with my team? What do I do with my colleagues? And I had to be brave enough to be vulnerable enough to tell them, this is my life right now. If you
Wow.
see me, and as much as it filled me with anxiety to share the story, it also calmed the anxiety by having people around me know what was going on. And here's the kicker. There were more people supportive than there were people like you.
We always think there's going to be a negative reaction or
Yeah.
response. Share a little bit about your role as the head of the It's a Stoma Association.
Yeah, the South African Society of Stomates.
So what do you do? How are you giving back? How did you get involved? What made you do that?
So I must be honest. So June, we will be in existence for 5 years. We started this organization in the middle of a pandemic. But for Heather and I, when we started the organization, it was about the lack of education. If I took my journey, and keep in mind, Heather has two stomas, one for urine, one for feces, Crohn's disease and bladder cancer. We didn't have a lot of information. How do we live with this thing? What do I need? I'm leaking. My nurse, she was brilliant. She's retired now. We're still in touch. I've got so much love for her. But people with this generally just seclude themselves. Here's this oak who's gone to run a marathon. He's since run 4 marathons. He's run 22 half marathons. He's completed a triathlon. He's run up mountains and he's active. And he's got all these issues because he's active, but he doesn't want to stop. He's looking for the solution that works. So we started the organization to provide information to people, living with a stoma, educating. And what we've been seeing in the community is everybody saying they're disabled. And I'm going, oh, hell no, you're not. So, we started to, as a support group, an educational support group. And it wasn't until I was invited to Johannesburg to speak at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital, where it all shifted. I remember getting very angry with the ostomates there, asking, I need a disability grant. How do I go about this? And in my head, I'm going, you're just being freaking lazy. You can very well live. And I've done all these things. And there's Lorata who went up Kilimanjaro. There's Jolene Taylor in the USA, who's a double ostomate. And she has a billboard of her showing off her bag. She's a freaking model. What do you mean? And again, you get these little bit of epiphanies. And I stopped talking. And I stopped having these conversations in my mind. And I started listening. And then I realized just how debilitating it was. And the fact is, we are not disabled. But if the state is not giving us our pouches, you are debilitating us. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind that my stoma pouch, I've actually got 1 year. This little pouch, to me, is what your toilet is to you. If you go to a venue and you're going to be there for several hours and they tell you the bathroom's out of order, immediately you need that bathroom and your anxiety levels go up. So you can't go to work, you can't get into a taxi because they're going to kick you out of that taxi. And that's where we shifted and we realized the need to have more advocacy involved. So SASS, or the South African Society of Ostomates, we're all about advocating for an improved quality of care. Sadly, nobody knows how many ostomates there are in the country. Nobody can give you that numbers. We estimate there to be around plus 700,000 ostomates. For that 700,000 ostomates, there is less than 100 qualified stoma nurses in this country. So ostomates are being butchered. We helped a mom who had 2 kids. Her daughters were 4 and 6. And the 4-year-old says, "Sis, mom, you stink, stay away from me." How do you expect this person to live? And people are suicidal, and rightly so. I wouldn't want to live like that. As much as I've embraced the leaks and embraced this, but I knew there's a solution. And my nurse was able to say, okay, that's not working, try this. And then it works for a bit. And my body profile changes because I'm bulking up now because of all the training. You need to shift in terms of what that prescription is. And this is the message, is the pouch is not like a plaster. It's not a bag. So many people call it a bag, and I'm saying we need to call it a pouch. A bag is a nice to have. It's an accessory. And it,
Ah,
very much like spectacles, the function of spectacles is to help me see, and it's to help you see, but we cannot interchange our spectacles. You know, my script is specific to me. The frame, my frame may not fit in your face. It may not suit your face. So our pouches are very much the same. It needs to be prescribed based on our body profile, our lifestyle. You know, someone working in an office environment is going to need less pouches a month than someone working in a factory who's moving around all the time. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen. And yeah, this fight with the Department of Health, I call it a fight because we're fighting bureaucracy, is to recognize stoma therapy as a specialty so that we can encourage more nurses to take up, and to raise the level of education with clinicians so that we can improve the dignity and the quality of life of the ostomate.
You know, it's also interesting. I'm just sitting thinking how you would have a ramp for someone in a wheelchair. You would have a special bathroom to accommodate disabilities. But we don't think about, you know, you can change your baby's nappy, or you can go and breastfeed. You can do all of that, but there's none of this to cater for, you know, for someone who needs to change their pouch.
The pouch. It's the truth. There's a shift in Europe. In the UK now, on the tube, you'll find these little posters. Our toilets are stoma friendly. You know, it will be a great help for me if there's water, so I can wipe and clean myself properly when I'm changing while I'm out in public, because things happen. You know, very often, especially when I was battling with the leaks, when I needed to use a public toilet, my biggest prayer walking in there was just let there be a seat cover on that toilet, because
Wow.
that became my workbench.
Oh, wow.
If you go into a disabled toilet, there's a basin there, there's running water, you've got the toilet, and you have the sanitary towel disposal bins, which if you seal up your bag properly, and it's exactly the same, you dispose of it exactly the same as you would a nappy.
Wow.
So, you know, not having access to those,
Mm.
and the lack of understanding. And one of the marathons that I ran was in Casablanca. And, you know, we did the marathon, then we went to go and travel a bit. And coming back, I'm on the train from Marrakesh to Casablanca. And the train's very much like the Gautrain train. It stops at the airport, on the airport. And the train was running late. And it's a rush. I have to get through customs. We have to check in. And as I'm standing in the queue in customs, I realized, hey, you're carrying a load here. And I wasn't too concerned because I'm a Boy Scout. I'm prepared. And I have a letter. And my letter states, Faizel's an ostomate. If you want to search him, it's cool, but just have a medical professional present. And I walk through this X-ray machine that goes around, and I'm standing like this, and I still look over at my wife. And as I drop my hands, I feel someone's hand come here, and he grabs my pouch, and I grab his hand. And now I've got fear all over my face. This customs officer looks like he's got "Ek het jou gevang" written all over his face. And I'm like, I got a letter, I got a letter, I got a letter. And he's pulling and I'm pulling, because if he had pulled that off, it would have been unpleasant for more than just me. And eventually a colleague of his said something in their language, and he let go, and I produced the letter. And then I realized, shit, he can't read, he doesn't understand English. So, you know, there's so much. I was prepared, but you don't know until you know. So now I know, and we've developed this little form that we use within SASS. If you're traveling, there's a link to Google Translate with a little bit of a blurb, so you copy paste and you get it translated. Something that simple.
Sure.
I've had my pouch swabbed for explosives, and it's like different kind of an explosion, but um, I've had pick and pay security give me looks, and they're coming there, and then I just lift the pouch. But I'm stupid enough to do that in public because
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
don't mind having a conversation about it. But
But
imagine
there's
someone
so
else.
many, yeah. Yeah, there's so many people that would be, I mean, as you said, the humiliation. The big corporate job, no
No
longer.
longer. No longer. SASS has become a full-time thing. I do have a little bit of a side hustle to help me supplement an income. I don't earn nearly as much as what I did, but I'm fulfilled. Yeah, I'm fulfilled.
I have just loved chatting to you. And when I said, please be honest and raw, you really were. And Faizel, I just want to thank you for everything that you do. I love the fact that you shared so deeply and so vulnerably that I know that this podcast will help other people and inspire other people, but also a newfound respect, because I think we walk around not really knowing other people's story, not really understanding. And I'm hoping society and organizations can start catering and considering, all aspects of medical conditions. Cancer did this to you, but I think what you're giving back and what you're doing back for the rest of society is your purpose.
I really believe I found my purpose. And if I could just add one thing in closing, and we did speak about how do these nonprofit organizations do more, and I think if you just take cancer, if you just look at cancer, you've got breast cancer, you've got colorectal cancer, brain cancer, cervical cancer, etc., etc. And at some point, they all sort of integrate. There's a uniqueness to them, but there's also a unique difference to them. And I think that nonprofits need to collaborate with each other a lot more. But more importantly, we got to formalize sort of a working committees, and that's just lack of better words here, between the nonprofit, which is civil society, corporate, and government. And because the civil society can give something to both the corporate and the government that they do not have, and that is the lived experience. And by understanding the lived experience, can we truly get, I believe, to equitable healthcare for all. And we got to remember that equitable healthcare for Constantia is very different to Hanover Park, and is very different to the rural sticks of the country.
Your story was such a powerful lived experience. And I thank you. I thank you, Faizel, for sharing, and thank you for the work that you do. And I'm excited about our partnership too, what we're going to do together as Living with Cancer. And I think from here on, you got this, you lived it, but hey, look at where you are now. And I'm sure you spend way more time with your boys than you ever did before, and they love you for that.
Yes, that's the truth.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.